all of a sudden, like a woman who has a plastic surgery addiction could be getting a sentient butt implant, just like there's just not a way for you to figure out what's going to happen next.
Please tell me that's actually one of the stories.
That is one of the stories. It's called the EP implant.
I can't wait to read that one. That sounds phenomenal. I love it.
Original geek, that's who I am. Rolling 20s with my squad, we got a plan.
All right, welcome to Original Geek. This is the all fandom podcast for sci-fi, fantasy, comics, and every pop culture obsession that built us. Whether you're Gen X, Millennial, or just geek curious, welcome to the basement. Hi, I'm Steve Scarfo.
And I'm Jeff Shaw, and it'll be your fractured timeline for today's desperate attempt to piece together what's real as we explore paranormal horror with paranormal horror author Alex Grass.
Hey, guys. I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to the basement.
All right.
Jeff's not in an actual basement. I'm in an actual basement because I live this for real. This is how I go.
You're the method actor.
I am.
He's got to get in.
And my wife won't let me upstairs with my gear. So there's part of it. That's part of it too. So we're gonna talk all things paranormal humor. Humor? Look at that! I went right in. Well, we'll do humor too. Paranormal humor and horror, but mostly horror with Alex. But first, we're gonna jump into our basement brief. It's the basement brief.
It's funny. I had thought that paranormal horror would be really distinct. And then as I thought about it, I'm thinking so much horror has a paranormal component to it. So I feel like that might even be too wide. I know. What do you think, Alex? Do you consider yourself?
I think that, it's interesting that there's so much like sort of like a taxonomy of genre these days so that people can find like a very granular place inside of like already what's broken down into granules. But I think that like sort of the origins of horror are, sort of coincide with like the late Victorian era, the flourishing of spiritualism, sort of like civilization reckoning with, on the one hand, this tremendous scientific progress, while at the same time wanting to like keep some of like the appurtenances of, let's say, religious practice. And I think that formed spiritualism, and that manifested in art, in ghost stories. So, in the beginning, there's only paranormal horror. I mean, you have M.R. James, ghost stories, Sheridan Le Fanu, and it's not until, the 20th century really that you start having stuff that's like not exclusively paranormal. I think some of it is like, I mean, you had the Penny Dreadfuls, so that's not entirely true,
Mm-hmm.
right? You had stories about like about crime, but horror, like the real origin of horror, there's paranormal, and then there's like, I guess you could argue that as much Gothic was a part of it, like the Castle of Otranto. But I don't know, like pick a franchise, and there's a paranormal element,
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I realized. Like, we could just call this a horror episode, Steve.
We could have. Welcome to the Artist's Alley. So before we dig in too deep, I do want to give a little background. So one of the things we want to do, and we'll talk a lot more about the works that you've produced, but I want to let folks know who you are. So we know who you are because we've been chatting. We've read some of your stuff, but Alex is a indie horror dark fantasy author. I'm reading. I apologize. I did some research.
That's all right.
You're from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and you've lived pretty much all over the world, but right now you're in Brooklyn. Is that right?
That's right. I've been remanded to Brooklyn.
Remanded. I love that.
Into the custody of my wife's extended family.
That is a place we all get remanded eventually, I think, is what happens. We don't really have a lot of choice. You were in a thrash metal band. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's
Shock
awesome.
Syndrome. And then another one called Neshama is Oh God.
Now,
It's-
did you do again? I did my internet research, but I never quite trust it. You were in law school.
yeah, yeah. I was a constitutional law student fellow, actually. Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah. I had gone in intending fully to be like a trial lawyer. I'm like, yeah, let's get this money, you know?
Yeah.
Let's rent seek. Let's leech off the underbelly of those most economically desperate in society. And then I went in and like we started taking, like it's one of the first classes you have to take, constitutional law. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. I could
That's
kind of
wild.
like, and then I ended up at a public interest constitutional law firm in DC in my first summer.
Wow.
We might have to have a whole other podcast with you on for different purposes that we won't jump into right now. But we also want to. So you have 4 books out right now. Black River Lantern, which Jeff has read. I'm about halfway through. Influencer, which is a novella. Dreck, which Jeff apparently can't get enough of, which is awesome. And then A Boy's Hammer. Those are the 4 you have out right now. But what we want to let folks know about mostly is coming up is your new short story collection called Infernal Tramps. We're recording late in June. This will come out in a couple weeks, so it should coincide pretty much with the July 15th release.
Yeah, well, that's what
We're going to give it the geek bump.
All
Yeah.
right.
It's a little bump, but it's going to be there.
Artist Alley is a new segment, but we do want to have more artists on the podcast. So if you're an artist, you want to feature your work on our podcast, reach out. Alex is our maiden voyage.
Yeah.
So
I'm the
There's a-
maiden.
There's another way
Yes.
you could have put that, and I'm glad you didn't, for the record. So tell us a little bit about Infernal Tramps. Is it the same sort of genre? Are you going in new directions?
It's pretty different. I would say it's like, if anything, it's like Dreck. It's just at bottom, it's you don't know what's going to happen. Not in the sense of a thriller, but like all of a sudden, like a woman who has a plastic surgery addiction could be getting a sentient butt implant. Just like there's just not a way for you to figure out what's going to happen next.
Please tell me that's actually one of the stories.
That is one of the stories. It's called the EP implant.
I can't wait to read that one. That sounds phenomenal. I love it.
And it's kind of like I'd gone through this whole, you take your knocks, life tumbles you, you tumble with it or you tumble against it. And I ended up being in rehab for 3 months. And that was really the watershed that broke my life into different segments, right? That's when I started writing horror. And the interesting thing is I found that as I got psychologically healthier, the more twisted the writing became, And so like in the earlier books, there's always some sort of resolution where the hero kind of wins, somewhat, right? But in these short stories in Infernal Tramps, it's like so gray. It's like slate gray. It's like the gray they sell to everybody at Home Depot that you put in every single room and office. It's the middle. And I think like one of the best ways I heard someone describe it is a reader on Goodreads said, think Twilight Zone meets Hostel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I loved it. It was great because, and I'm so unaware of this stuff. Like, so for instance, you have this, obviously that story, EP Implant, is a body horror story. And,
there's another genre, body horror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
Subgenre.
But subgenre. But, it's body horror. It's like the supernatural is elementally paranormal, I think. And there are probably people who disagree with that, but supernatural is elementally paranormal, right? And body horror, in its more extreme manifestations is inherently supernatural. If you think of like Pinhead and Hellraiser, or you think about like this. Well, I guess the substance would be sci-fi horror, actually. But I think that like for the transformations in body horror to take place, there has to be something that is outside the scope of the normal reality. And so there's a lot of that in this book, but there's also a lot of like funny stuff. I'm terrible at prostituting myself. I try it.
That's okay.
That's our job.
Ask
We're
you
here
a
to
couple
pimp you out.
of questions, because one thing I love about horror, and I used to be a public school teacher. I taught film studies and I taught horror, and you have to, of course, be careful as you're teaching horror but what I wanted them to take away from it was that horror is really good at holding a mirror up to society. And I know we don't give it the same weight that we give to drama or what have you. It's often not up for the Oscars. It's not getting the awards or the recognition. But one thing I loved about Black River Lantern and very, very, very much Dreck was that I felt like there's so much commentary about our society today. And yes, it takes place in a far-flung future and a different reality. But man, it's about today. It's about us. Are you doing that as well with these stories? Is there, and I can kind of see that plastic surgery gone awry, right?
100%, 100%. Yeah, you have like, so I think of like these are like marquee moral issues, right? This is the banner stuff. You have to worry that like living a good life requires you to contemplate at a point. Unless you live a frictionless life, and in which case I don't think you could really get a handle on morality anyway. Because you need a little bit of the friction to be able to understand like where you can be damaged by going one way or the other in terms of good behavior or bad behavior. Let's generally categorize it as morality. But I think that in the story you have like in Infernal Tramps, you have a story where a security guard at an art museum has like this sort of like inkling of an idea, just this sort of, he's sort of nudged by something inside of him to steal an artifact. And then that totally unravels the entire city. But you just sort of see like the very common behavior of trying to cover up lies with more lies and trying to, patch up disaster with more disaster. And, so you have something like that. You have, the plastic surgery story, the tremendous pressure to achieve some sort of aesthetic perfection or some sort of ideal, but it's divorced completely from, like higher aspirations of beauty. It has nothing to do with symmetry. It has nothing to do with, if you want to get mystical, the golden ratio or anything like that. It's just sort of like arbitrary, it's sugar water is what it is.
Yeah.
There's no substance and it's really sweet. And if you have a little bit of it, you want to have a lot more.
I like that.
And then you also deal with, for me, it's very personal, but like you deal with alcoholism. What does it look like to isolate yourself and to know that you're destroying your life and alienating the people around you, and to still do it despite the awareness? Because, like the awareness is not the cure for anything. You have to work. It doesn't matter that that you're a shitheel. You have to be less of a shitheel.
All right. Now, speaking of the drinking Black River Lantern, so Steve, you can pipe in. There's a lot of bourbon being consumed, and I'm very impressionable. Like when I'm watching a TV show, someone's having their after dinner, bourbon. I'm like, I gotta go get some bourbon. Yeah. Steve, when you're reading this, you're like, I think I need some bourbon while I'm reading this.
I will say, I had to drive my daughter to a gymnastics event. So as much as I wanted some bourbon, I did not, in fact, have some bourbon and then drive my daughter. I did resist. I do love there's something about that the element of bringing that in of alcohol in the story, it does, it speaks to something everybody uses. It's always, at least as far as I've gotten through, but especially for Marivakos and for Eddie, there's sort of it's a bridge for them, and it's a way for them to connect. And he does it again with Lex later. They connect over the alcohol, and it sort of does speak to the way we use alcohol in society today, right? It's not just, it doesn't feel like you just put it in there. Oh, let's talk about, you used it to a purpose. And maybe I'm giving you some motivation you didn't have, but that's the way it felt, that there was a connection in there.
No, I
Right.
mean, I think it's something that comes out comes out in the narrative easily because it's true. Alcohol patches holes in you, and one of the holes it patches up is social anxiety. You have a drink, and all of a sudden you can talk to people.
Yeah, and what I like that you do when someone has like a vice like that works until it doesn't. And then you just keep consuming, but it doesn't quite ever get back to where you were. And so I thought that with what's the main character in Black River Lantern?
Eddie.
Eddie. Yeah, so like at first it works for Eddie's. So for those listeners, Black River Lantern, we should give it a quick plug as well. It's an excellent read. So Alex, you go ahead. I don't know if you can do a quick plug for it.
But it's Black River Lantern.
I got Dreck in here, so
No problem. No problem.
He's so focused.
Black River Lantern is the saga of the Marivikos family who run a seasonal carnival. The father, Papa Marivikos, is a very, very evil man who's also excellent at exercising his evil through the power he wields. And Eddie is sort of like, Eddie was modeled after Prince Mishkin in The Idiot by Dostoevsky, just sort of like a simple,
Really?
simple, sweet character, sort of battered by the winds of fate. And the story is essentially what happens when you have an incredible supernatural paranormal power in the case of the antagonist, Eddie Marivikos, and it's misdirected until it grows. It's, like power will exercise its own prerogatives. You can seek to exercise power, but it's an invisible animal itself, and it has its own hunger, and that's what happens with, ultimately it blows up in many people's faces in the book.
literally.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes.
spoiler.
That's right.
All right. So, as much as I think we could probably talk all night, it sounds like Jeff is chomping at the bit to get to talking about Dreck. So we are going to drop into our random review. Now, this also is our first random review of a novel. Typically, we're talking, a TV show or movie. So let's jump in.
It's time for a random review.
All right. Welcome to the Original Geek Random Review. We set the topic, the dice set the direction. We know what we're reviewing, just not how.
And today we actually have a book that we're doing a random review for, Dreck, and we have the author, Alex Grass, with us to do this random review. So hopefully Steve will not roll a 1 where we have, which can be, a critical miss. And
However you roll, I'm trashing this thing.
There we go.
We should have, we did talk to Alex a little bit before. We should have told you. So we also cut this segment out. So there'll be some more of this, expository kind of stuff. So if you've never seen one of our random reviews, then we have a list of 12 items that are AI generated. We use the old fancy 20-sided dice. And I will roll for both Alex and for Jeff today. They're going to be reviewing the novel Dreck, which was your third book. Is that correct?
I think it was in publishing order. Yeah.
Publishing order, it was third. So it doesn't matter. Go read them all. But
in Dreck, because I realized a lot of when we do these random reviews, they're things that are popular, and not that Dreck isn't. Dreck's popular, or it should be. Anyway, but things that like we don't need to tell them what Star Wars is. So Dreck is this a great novel. if you like post-apocalyptic stories like I do, you're gonna love this. Some titles that leap out to me that I like resonate with it, 12 Monkeys, Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, Brazil from a long time ago, and they're like just this most absurd version of the future, and yet believable at the same time. Totally believable.
Yeah.
All right. So that's
all right, my wife would love that you brought up Terry Gilliam. She would love that. That's high praise. That's one of her favorite movies, Brazil.
That's
nice.
awesome. All right. So here we go. We're going to have guests go first, Jeff. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Alex. And I realize you don't have the list in front of you. We both have the list, so I'm going to read it for you. Oh, you know what I did? I rolled a 1.
No way.
We got to do it.
Okay.
All right. So it's a critical fail. The book is not, just my ability to roll a dice. I don't know if you were a D&D guy at all, Alex, but for me, this is just par for the course. My longest running character has probably got the most natural ones in history to his credit, and many character deaths from our own party. So anyway, this is
also AI came up with this. So
yeah, so this is not a real
Google
fail.
Gemini, how dare you?
We just use that. We use the scale because it's more fun. It's called The Narrative Fog is the type. The intensely confusing, dreamlike opening act. Now this is for Dreck. Stuck in the dark. The book drops the reader directly into a hyper-dense, surreal post-war reality without a map. Early on, the world building is so intentionally baffling and vague that some viewers threw the book down before the actual plot kicked in. So again, no idea that that's what it said.
I love that Alex got a kick out of that.
Oh, that's so great.
So again, no idea what was on the screen until I just rolled it. I quite honestly don't read these in advance, so I don't know what they are. So I will have something to say after you guys talk. I know I haven't read Dreck, but I think there's some stuff in here that's more than just your actual plot, that there's some plot trips. Anyway, so Alex, what do you think of that review?
I feel AI's vindicated itself.
Now feel completely free to disagree, and as the voice who wrote,
listen, it's I'll give it this. AI recognizes like patterns, okay, or at least trends, and I hate to reduce myself to that, but there's definitely a sense of like in many of the stories, there's a sense of like the intermediary state between, reality and the unreal. And so, yeah, it's foggy as shit. It's you're sort of like grasping at straws, trying to pull together what the future looks like. And, this is something that like maybe I'm not super aware of, because when you're the writer, you're done writing it and you know everything that's going on. But I've definitely been on the other side where I'm reading a book and I'm just like, okay, let's see, what's happening here. I don't know, but
so look,
I'm going to give it a hard disagree.
Oh, I was going to say, before you do that, because I'm going to do this as from the voice of ignorance in terms of the actual book itself. And I will also disagree, and I'll say that as a tool provides the reader, and if people did throw it down, that's on them, right? When you have a tool that you use like that, when you bring someone into the middle of a confusing situation, regardless of the actual story behind it, you've obviously done that for a purpose. You've done this because you want the reader to feel what the character is feeling, because my guess is this character also is very confused and very, trying to figure out what's happening at this point in time. And so I think if people do throw a book down because it doesn't this is part of our culture, because, we are Gen X. People have so short an attention span these days that they don't want to give something the time it's due, right? So if you take a minute to get into a story, there's probably a point to it. There's probably a reason for it. So I know Jeff's going to have some more specific stuff to talk about, but I just wanted, before he went on, because I didn't want to play off anything you said, that seems to me like a really bad way to read a book. If you're going to read the book, you should be digging, the way the story is being presented. It's like watching a movie we just did a Spielberg episode. It's like watching a Spielberg movie and go, I liked everything except the way Spielberg directs. Like, well, then why would you watch the movie? It's not like you want to see their perspective. That's the point. So go ahead. Sorry.
It's like Curb Your Enthusiasm. Loved it. Too much Larry David.
Exactly. Exactly.
So my hard disagree is I did not think it was confusing at all. Maybe because I like this genre of post-apocalyptic fiction, but also because I actually sent Steve a text. I'm like, oh, I finished Black River Lantern. We're good to go for Monday. And then like, I'm going to start Dreck. And I read it in a day. It's amazing. And I disagree with the narrative fog because right away this hook is phenomenal. You have this coroner who has the boogeyman brought in on a gurney. I mean, how did the boogeyman get on your gurney? Like, I'm sorry, but that setup has me hooked. Do I know how the boogeyman got there? No. Do I know anything about the long war that led to the apocalypse? I don't know.
And
I don't know anything.
A real
and that's
person?
Okay. That's part of the point of reading a book.
Yes.
Is to be confused in the beginning and not as much at the end.
Yeah, for
Now,
sure.
You don't know my family, Alex, but we just had this conversation last week. It's like watching a movie with my mother. Literally, it'll fade in and there's a person stabbing another person and she asks like 9 questions.
Who is that?
Yeah. Why is he doing that? Who is that? Why is that? Like, you don't need to know. Watch the movie. That's the point. Read the book. That's the point.
You're describing every mother. You're
Yes,
describing everybody. Just
is
who
probably
is
true.
that? Why are they doing it? Why are they wearing that?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, doesn't someone tell them what they're doing is wrong? You're gonna miss the whole thing. You know, but it's save Q&A for the close.
Yes. Awesome. So, you guys
I'll
ready
roll
for
for
number
me.
2? Ready, Jeff? All right. I'm not going to roll another one. I'm not going to let it be another one. That's a 13. This is a knowledge history check for the Long War Scars. The piecemeal history of how society fell apart. A grounded dystopia. Grass brilliantly handles the backstory. Instead of a massive info dump, the scars of the catastrophic war are revealed naturally through the ruined landscape, changing borders, and the lingering psychological trauma of the survivors.
I agree. I think that there is no info dump, and it kind of speaks to that critical miss where, I don't know what's going on right away. Yeah, because you don't get to find it all out right away. Yeah. And you want to keep reading. That's what I said. Like I was up all night reading this thing because like, what? How is this? Just one more page, just one more chapter, because I do love this genre, post-apocalyptic, and I love when someone can really dig into society. There's this scene because it's the boogeyman, and different people want the body. And immediately there's like a war over what to do with his body. And then these three religions have, show up. But they're not what they should be. Like there's Mormons, but they're not really Mormons. Like they got it wrong.
Yeah.
They're like, Jesus had these gold plates. He could see the future, but not that great. No one else could see it. And then, or Joseph Smith could see it.
Yeah.
And just like, these variations, how things got so twisted, and then how they just get it wrong. And what you think about, like when we dig stuff up with Egyptian hieroglyphs, we're just making a guess. Who knows? We could be entirely wrong.
Yeah.
And so, take someone, and so that's what I like that, for what Alex did in creating this version of a future. It's full of the absurd. So don't look for like this isn't like supposed to be firmly grounded. This is making fun of us, and we got to be able to laugh at ourselves. And I thought it was very well done.
So
You gotta stop. You gotta stop. I'm like turning the beet red. I can't. You gotta stop.
Sorry.
So I'm going to make it worse. So I again, I haven't had a chance to read Dreck yet, but I will say that I think you handled Black River Lantern the same way, because it starts off in this action and you're like, okay, what's happening? What's going on? And I never felt, and I still haven't at any point in my read through that it was an info dump. I feel like I've been learning and getting to know the characters chapter to chapter, scene by scene. I feel like you've taken your time and introduced everyone to us. And it hasn't been, I sometimes get annoyed when you read or watch anything and it's like the first 15 minutes is like, and I'm going to say this, but of course it's Star Wars starts off with an info dump, but it's like, I don't want that. Don't tell me half the story. If you have to tell me half the story, then you should have written another book or you should have done another movie. Right. And I guess Star Wars eventually did, but so I really appreciate that as well. Again, from a different perspective from your other novel, but I totally agree. I wouldn't want to have done a dump of info. I like the way you lay stuff out.
Yeah, and I think it's and obviously you know better than us, but because you've published or self-published or did you? So
I'm a indie whole hog, man.
So, but still, and we can that's something I do want to touch in our evolution segment, but I think what a lot of writers struggle with is not doing the info dump. Because you've got all these ideas, right? And just how do you, lay the breadcrumbs out instead of giving us the whole loaf of bread at the beginning? So
it's interesting. I have this conversation or some version of this conversation with my wife all the time because, she's always like, oh, I want to, she's definitely a serviceable writer, but she's a doctor. So she's doing medical writing, And she's like, I really wish I could write. And I said, like, the biggest problem, and I realize I see it, in her writing too, is people don't write the way that they talk or think. And that's how you want to be writing. Listen, an adorned version of how you want to be writing, I definitely don't actually speak the way that I write in Dreck. That would be pretty amazing. But also sort of like wearying after a while. You'd be like, oh God, Here's Mr. Lexicography again, but I think that, a good story is not an info dump either, In fact, I think we all recognize what a bad story is. It's when you're captive at a dinner or at the bar or, at a family get together and someone starts going, yeah, it was in Chicago. No, it was in Peoria. Well, it had to be in Chicago because that was the year that Betty graduated from Northwestern. But
honey, what year did Betty graduate? Then
yeah, exactly. And it's just we're just like we've got like the whole back history. It's like, okay, but who got the abortion? Jesus,
Right. 20 minutes later, and they still have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right. So.
All right.
Yeah, I think. We're gonna keep going back and forth on this stuff, but in terms of random review, so again, if you've never watched one of our random reviews, please like, subscribe, join us, follow Alex on all social media. Alex, what's your social media? Are you on Instagram or everywhere?
I'm on Instagram at Infernal Tramps. Nice. I mostly use it to email people because someone ruined the message function on Goodreads, and I did a little research into it. And I'm like, what could this possibly be? It's a dick pic, of course.
Oh my God.
just like literally
on Goodreads.
Just
Do you know what's insulting? Is it wasn't just a really detailed description of a dick pic?
Yeah. How dare they?
If you're going to send a dick pic on a site like Goodreads, at least write it out for frick's sake.
Yeah, exactly. This is highly offensive, but it's definitely the best 3,000 words I've read about a tumescent organ ever.
So check Alex out on Infernal Tramps and on Goodreads. Just don't send any dick pics and check out all the books. And we're gonna jump into our next segment because we're gonna go back in time.
Let's take a trip through time. It's a Geek Flashback.
All right. So I'm going to jump into this one first, Jeff. There's one thing while I was reading, and still am, Black River Lantern, um, it made me think of the movie Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Hmm.
And
The carnival, perhaps?
it's a carnival. I know, but it's like, I don't know if that was if that was an inspiration at all, or if it just sort of happenstance. But in terms of flashback, that was one of the first horror movies, especially supernatural style horror movies, that I remember, and it was so intense. And for years, I think I watched it when I was an early teen. The phrase "by the pricking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes" was stuck in my head for decades. And it just really, I don't know, it really did something to me, and it made me really interested in this style of story. Yeah, it's not a long flashback for me, but that's definitely it. So
Alex, what was your first memory?
I'm not sure exactly what the first memory is, but I remember when I saw the movie The Dentist with I think Corbin Burnson, and this is like, yeah. So this is back in the our contemporaries will know this, although the more youthful cohort will not. You used to just watch what was on TV, and you had no choice.
we say that all the time.
It used to be. I have spent many late nights enjoying many a shampoo infomercial. But there's this movie called The Dentist. There's nothing else on, and you don't stop watching television. That's ridiculous, you know. So I watched The Dentist, and this guy is like drilling out. You know, it's a torture film. It's a snuff flick, you know, and that scared the pants off of me. Oh my God, because like the idea, I think that this is, you know, it's interesting because this would be like to the exclusion sort of paranormal horror, but this is something that's so terrifying because it takes the mundane, sort of the requisite part of childhood. You have to go to the dentist, you know?
Yes.
Everybody goes to the dentist, and it says it's all true. Every bad thing you imagine about him is true. And he's going to drill your teeth out, and he's going to laugh. Ah, ha, 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 ha. And you're going to go to school, and you're going to be, and then, you know, like your mind builds on it. You're like, you're going to go to school, and like, not all your teeth are going to be missing, but you'll be naked too. And
That's funny. I always do some quick live Googling. It was 1996. I have not seen that.
yeah. Yeah.
I
So I
definitely-
guess I would have been 11.
Well, that's early for a horror movie. Maybe 12 if it was you watched it on TV, right? Maybe a year later.
No, I saw stuff earlier than that. My dad I just can't remember which ones, but my dad took me to, I guess you'd have to like look up the timeline for Alien. Let me see.
Yeah, I'll be honest. You and Jeff have the same dad then, because he took Jeff to all sorts of movies when he was young too.
Not horror though. Like horror, and the funny thing is there's plenty of scary things in some of the stuff I watched, but my first horror movie, or close to, was 1984's Firestarter. I would have been 14 years old. And the reason I finally like accepted like that I was going to watch a horror movie and be brave is because I was a comic book reader, and I loved the X-Men. And this looked like the closest thing I was going to get to the X-Men, because at that time you didn't think there'd be a good superhero movie. There's plenty of bad ones.
Yeah,
Didn't think you're
God.
going to get a good one. And like this looked like a great movie, and had superpowers. And yeah, there's going to be some negative consequences and allegedly horror, Stephen King. But that was my, and then I was hooked from there on out. A huge Stephen King fan, and started watching horror movies after that. But that was my entry, was Firestarter.
Yeah, that's you know, it's interesting. That's a very good one that I saw very late. I think that the one that I saw probably earlier was Cujo. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is the case, but I've heard this from other people too, that like it was the first movie, but also the first Stephen King book that they read, Cujo. And I wonder why that is. Like maybe there's some sort of like maybe it's allowed in school libraries because there's no religious implications in it, right?
Well, maybe.
You know,
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's of all the Stephen King that I have read, Cujo is not one that I've actually read.
It's like, you know, it's kind of what you expect. You know, there's like a person who isn't a terrible person, but commits infidelity and sort of like ruins their life doing it, and then just sort of like by happenstance, you know, a seedling of evil is planted via pathogen into this dog. I mean, but like not supernatural evil, just like you know, gets bit on the nose.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I just looked up. Cujo came out in '83, 1 year before Firestarter. That was my entry. So I was 1 year too late for.
Yeah, I mean,
But hey, take us to court, Steve.
I think it's time.
The fandom is divided. It's time for Geek Court.
All right, Geek Court. The case: does horror need humor, or does comedy kill the scare? Arguing for that comedy disarms you so that horror lands harder, or at least that horror and comedy can mix, will be Alex, at the very least. I don't know if, Steve, you also want to step in. And arguing against that jokes break the tension and lay the reader off the hook. So I will argue against, and arguing for that comedy belongs in horror. Alex, do you want to take it?
absolutely. Comedy and horror are actually, to a certain degree, indistinguishable in that the way that they affect the consumer depends on how close you are to a tragedy. There's no shortage of you know, there's no shortage of jokes about, for instance, child getting locked inside of a refrigerator in the middle of a junkyard. But surely the first time that would have happened, it would have been so terrifying that it would have been completely forbidden. It would have been very taboo to talk about it. Now, the other thing is that, you know, like what's funny and what's terrifying changes along with, you know, like a culture's mores. So you might have, you know, something like something that's really horrifying 150 years ago would be the idea of being a woman unmarried at 35. It would be like, it'd have genuinely bad implications for your life and for the reputation of your family, which, you know, it's very different times. So of course, you know, like the name of the family was essentially your social capital in the world. And it dictated to a degree what you could do economically. But now we see in film, we make fun of the stepmothers or the overbearing mothers who think that their daughters need to get married immediately. So it's sort of like, you know, Chris Rock, I don't know if this is apocryphal. I think I remember him saying this, but he says, you know, comedy rots, right? Well, comedy rots so much that it could turn into horror, and horror can eventually stagnate by virtue of distance from the tragedy that it's based on, that it could become comedy. You know, the best example of this is, I think, I forget the exact number, but South Park said, it's been 23.6 years. AIDS is finally funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so I might jump to both sides just to play devil's advocate, but I'm going to agree with you on this. I don't know if you know this, I'm also a stand-up. So the difference between comedy and horror is a difference in degree. It's not a difference in fact, right? So the oldest joke in the book, or the oldest imagery of comedy of someone slipping on a banana peel and falling, is the epitome of the humor and at the same time, the tragedy of someone falling. And it's not horror, but it is the beginning of that scale of, as you just said, you get to a point where we're trying to decide when, oh, there's Cat. You're trying, the decision is when does the humor become horror? And that's the difference in degree. And I know the joke you were talking about with the refrigerator.
Yeah.
But I will say too, in the actual use, like in a horror movie or in a horror story, when you can break some tension with humor, right? They do live along the same continuum, but I think those are perfect pressure release valves, right? If you use them properly, then the humor doesn't take away from the horror. It accentuates it because it's like any good thing, right? You don't know how good something is until you know how bad it can be. Then you see the level of difference. When you see that moment of humor in the middle of gore, you go, oh, all right, wait, this is really that much worse than because when you're in any situation, when you're reading about it or you're watching it and it's just evil, 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 you sort of not become desensitized, but you get used to it. And then,
Yeah.
it's up to you as the author to either keep upping your game or throw some pressure release on us. And you often do both, right? So you have a bigger end than you would have at the beginning. The gore or the horror factors aren't going to be the same, but the pressure release in the middle is that waveform of storytelling where you take it up and you bring it back down. And I think humor does that better than almost anything else.
And I just want to add one thing.
Okay.
Just add one thing. And it's that it also, good art is art that has an elemental truth to it, and authenticity. And in real life, terrible, terrible things are often complemented by very, very funny or absurd situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, this is one, there was this awful case. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it, but this is a woman named Teresa Stout, and she killed her stepson, right? And I'm watching the trial, and it's just like, it's what you would expect. It's child death. It's terrible. But then they bring on these interviews, and her angle, Teresa Stout's angle, is that she has multiple personality disorder. And you see all these interviews, and she's terrible. She's the worst fake dissociative identity disorder poser ever, and it's hilarious. And that's what life is like.
Yes, 100%.
All right. So I know I'm taking against, and I also want to say the difficulty I had in finding the evidence that the director, the writer, doesn't need to take their foot off the gas. It can be horror from beginning to end without relent. There's not too many. I was thinking, oh, Silence of the Lambs. And then I realized there's the guy's like dancing, and he's got his penis tucked.
There's a lot of funny
fuck
stuff.
me, and then
Fuck me so
the
hard.
fava beans, and I'm like, oh, those are kind of funny. And then, but I do have two bits of evidence, and these movies are two of the scariest movies I've seen, and they're so disturbing. And I cannot remember anything funny about either Hereditary or Midsummer. And those movies are just almost relentlessly dark, depressing, and horrifying without release and without a moment at the end where you're like, oh, we have some redemption. I know some people think Midsummer does, but man, those are tough. And so as I say that, I recognize, yes, you can have horror without that, but I don't want to watch those movies again. I was scared, and they were incredible movies, but I will rewatch Silence of the Lambs and other movies that give me just a little bit of a break. So,
Yeah. It's interesting. Like creating, I think good horror is like, it's, how they say, like baking is chemistry and cooking is art, or whatever they say.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the proportion that you have, because if you take the piss out of everything, then you don't have a horror movie. What you have is sort of just like,
You have
you
scary
know,
movie.
yeah, you're scary movie. And like, listen, that has its place, that has its place. But there are too many people who get too close to that, while still trying to like maintain the facade of being an auteur, And it's like, listen, you love it or you don't, you can't take the piss out of everything. But you
So
can try.
you can try.
You could try.
So what do you guys think? Do you agree that humor belongs in horror, like Alex and I believe it, or do you disagree with Jeff?
I'm actually surrendering.
Do you oh, you're just going to give up? Jeff's just going to give up.
I'm proud of my record in these geek courts in this podcast.
Yes, you
I
are
am
proud
not
to
happy
lose
with my
most of
delivery on this one.
Sometimes, listen, I clerked at the public defenders. You know what they say? Sometimes you just got a dog of a case.
Yeah, and that is absolutely what
did.
Jeff had. That was a dog.
I did.
So tell us why you agree with all of us that humor belongs in humor. The Original Geek Podcast at gmail.com, and check us out. But right now, we're going to talk some evolution.
From floppy disks to streaming clicks, it's Geek Evolution.
We should probably make this one short. I had an idea, and hopefully for Evolution this will work. When I did teach film studies, I also taught creative writing. And one thing I told my students, without any true experience myself, but the evolution of getting something published, what I told them is they're at a time when it's much easier to publish yourself, to get your work out there. How, like, was I saying accurate? Do you think it has changed over the years to be a published, author, or is it about the same, just a different medium?
No, 100%. I think that was very good advice. You have to attend to your art with more discernment as the artist yourself, though. That's the thing, So like the gatekeepers, they're not the same that they are, right? There isn't a monolith in media. There isn't a monolith in any kind of media. You no longer have newspapers where they can decide whether or not to let the United States know that FDR can't walk. You no longer have three major networks that frame the way that the national news is delivered into people's homes. But and let me say this, and also in publishing. It's not just in publishing, but it's in film. The access is tremendous. It really is like a renaissance. That if someone has a good enough idea and they can execute it well, there is a way to get it out there, and people will respond. Mm-hmm. That in itself is incredible, because there was nothing close to that when we were young. There was nothing like that. Like I said earlier, you watched what was on TV. That was it.
Yeah. And if you were an author 20 years ago, maybe even as recently as 10 years ago, you had no choice but to go to a publishing company. You weren't getting on a physical bookshelf or into anybody's hands before the advent of like a Kindle or the Nook. There was online blogging and reading, and people were writing and stuff online, but I haven't looked it up. I'll have to check the date on when the first e-readers came out. But when it became possible for someone to say, because I think even at the beginning of both of those devices, which are really, I think, started that proliferation of the ability for folks to get media. At the same time when YouTube was allowing people to do video content, these platforms were allowing people to get out their written content. But I think even at the start, like Nook and Kindle was just repurposing already printed material, right? They took books that were already in print and digitized them so people could read them. And it wasn't until some years later that people like yourself had the opportunity to say, I have something I want to say, and I think people will like it. And it turns out, yes, absolutely people will. And it gave you that opportunity. In that process, I'm very interested myself, what do you think? Like, if you had to give someone advice about, like which platforms to use or how to go about? Like what would you say to someone who was in your shoes? I think it was 2020 your first novel came out, like 7 years ago.
That sounds right.
What would you say to someone who was where you were 7 years ago with a great story but like no clue what to do with it?
Take the time. Listen, anything is take the time to do the research to really find out. There's going to be good information out there. There's going to be bad information out there. But there is so much that you can learn from out there that you can figure it out. You know, I'm not like, I didn't know anything about publishing when I started, but I figured out to some degree how to do marketing. And, you know, get used to doing things you don't like, because it's a different version of the stuff you didn't like, you wouldn't want to do 30 years ago that the publishing houses would have you do, you know? Like, listen, it's like, there are some great experiences like this, but there's also like agonizing experiences where you go in a podcast, like they're not interested. You're filling a slot, you know? And
We heard one of those.
yeah.
Let me
So,
apologize.
Alexander, do you write romance?
Let me apologize to you for them, because they should have.
But, you know, you take it as it comes. I would say that, like, there is more access than ever. The only problem with that is that you have to work 2 times, 5 times, 10 times, 50 times as hard to make sure you're putting out something that you say, you know, basically you're the kid who shows up at the basketball court while Michael Jordan's there, and you'll say, like, I'll play a game of one-on-one. Let's do it, you know? And you don't have to win, but you want to not embarrass yourself, you know? And so sometimes when I read, you know, like I've read self-published books and I've just been like, you know, you almost resent them. You're like, you know, geez, have some pride, go through the process, or don't bother. Not everyone's supposed to be a writer. It's okay, you know?
Yeah, the downside, and I think is where you're heading, is there's so much noise. So many people can now self-publish. It's hard to know where's the good stuff. So how do you find that digging through the noise to make sure that your gems can be found?
No, it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard. You know, you do some legwork. You find, like, you contact readers, and, you know, you say, like, are you interested in reading this book? You contact critics. You know, get, like, you have reputable outlets to review your work if you can. And, you know, but more important than anything, you try and write something, you know, you put the effort into the work. The bulk of the effort has to be into the writing. Just like, you know, like you can do a marketing blitz all you want. You know, you could have the Disney marketing machine behind you, but if the movie's not good, people aren't going to watch it. You know, you cannot sell people on, I didn't think it was that bad, but, you know, it's a good example, you know, the Captain Marvel sequel, you know?
Yeah,
The Marvel.
I thought it was
yeah.
good.
Yeah. I liked it, but, like, it's an example where there's other ones that did sell themselves, you know, like the first Iron Man, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you have to work on the product itself. That's the best advice I can give, because you know, maybe you'll have worse luck than some people. Maybe it'll take, you know, 20 years instead of 5. You know, maybe people won't get it at first, because that happens, you know? That happens. And you know what? Maybe it's as bad as you'll die before people like your work, you know? But if you believe in it, you know, I'm not going to say be okay with it, but, you know, like, accept it. This is how it works.
Yeah, I'll say that's the same sentiment that you're talking about with writing. I find for performing and doing stand-up, because it's a very subjective medium, and people either love it or they hate it. And my jokes aren't always for everybody. I perform pretty well, but if someone doesn't like my material, you have to be proud of what you're doing. I have to be proud of what I'm producing. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. You have to be proud of what you did. And if you can't put in the work to be proud of what you produced, no amount. And I know a lot of stand-ups who are amazing at marketing and just not good on stage. And I think that's the only parallel I can draw. I do. We are just running a little long in the tooth on this. I know Jeff has a little evolution he wants to talk about. I will say, I think you hit the rant part of our show.
That's what I was going to say.
You hit the nail on the head. I don't think we need to do a special rant section because what you said is perfect.
Yes. This happens. Just, Alex, you played right into our trap. Our evolution, for whatever reason, always ends with a rant.
Always.
A message to the audience, to the next generation, to whoever. So well done. Nicely done.
And get off my lawn.
Yes. So we're gonna jump into our final segment here. We're gonna do critical hits and epic fails.
It's critical hits and epic fails.
All right. My critical hit is actually one of your quotes. And there was actually quite a few that I saved. But this one, this is from Dreck. And, hopefully some people will see, why I enjoyed it so much, because it's that commentary on our real society. I think that's what horror at its peak does. And so this is from Dreck. It isn't that all politicians are evil. That's all too simple. Many, and maybe at some very special time, a majority of them might even have been good if moral luck had aligned their fates with the goodness of their time. The price of admission to this carnival of canards is one's integrity, or less hysterically, one's dignity. But many willingly surrender their dignity. It's not an unreasonable calculus. Dignity matters only for those who put a premium on it. It can't be bought. And politicians are very much in the business of what can be bought. It's so true. So true.
I can't believe I wrote that.
Of course, you also wrote, there was another line, and if you, I assumed you created, I've never seen it elsewhere, from Black River Lantern, which was the couple who was drinking some wine, and we were having some sour grapes for a pair of sour grapes. And the juice of some sour grapes for a pair of sour grapes. I thought that was good.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it's Dr. Chain. He's saying that to Lexi.
Yeah.
She asked for a glass of wine. And he's like, "You want half glass?" Because she's pregnant. Oh, full glass. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now you guys are throwing spoilers at me because I'm not there in the book yet. But that's my epic fail is me, that I didn't get a chance to read the whole book. I have been enjoying it. Unfortunately, life is life. But honestly, I said it a little bit before. The way you structure the story, the evolution from character to character, the story grows. I love the way you pace everything. I'll be honest with you. When you reached out, we were happy to have you on. We were excited because you're the first person to reach out to us and say, "Hey, I'd love to do your show," and we were excited. And then, honestly, there was a moment where I was like, "Oh, right, is this gonna be?"
We probably should have read something of his first.
We were so. I am so happy to say you have more than lived up to the hype. So my hit is thank you for being here. Thank you for reaching out. And thank you for just being an amazing writer, because honestly, this could have gone sideways and we might have called you Alexander and asked you about romance, but I'm so happy that we didn't have to. So that's my hit.
Oh my God. I love this show. I love you guys. I do.
Thank you, Alex.
I just do.
So before we jump off, Alex, one more time, let everybody know where they can find you. Let's talk about the new release.
Absolutely. You could find everything you need to know related to my new short story collection, Infernal Tramps, at infernaltramps.com. You could find me on Instagram at Infernal Tramps. You could find the new book on Amazon, presented by the great overlord Bezos. By just typing in Infernal Tramps or my name, Alex Grass. I'm going to say it for the old man, because he used to say this when answering phones. grass like the green grass. And everything else is I don't know, just like sort of riding in the interstices of the ether. Otherwise, you know, the particulate of the digital trail I've left behind. You know, but I'll say this: InfernalTramps.com is going to be a good bet for you out there who are interested.
There you go. So
Awesome.
also check out all of the rest of the works that we've been talking about. Check him out on Goodreads. Go on Amazon, read the books, rate them, review them. Do the same on Goodreads. I know that helps with everybody's getting the word out about getting more readers. And Jeff, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I gave Dreck 5 stars on Amazon, so Bezos, pay the man. Pay the man. You can afford it.
All right. So thanks for joining us again, Alex. If you guys are out there, please, like, subscribe, check us out, check out all Alex's stuff, and we'll see you guys next time.